Okay. So it's the end of autumn, right? And we get to do an event online tonight that I look forward to every single fall or autumn. And I am just thrilled. I love Autumn House. And I was actually just telling the editor, Christine, who you'll hear from, and Christine Stroud, who you hear from in just a second, that these books are especially beautiful this year in content and craft. The writers and the press just did such a good job. So I really wanted to take a moment and celebrate. I had celebrated with them in private, but I wanted to also just celebrate it in public because they are gorgeous, gorgeous books. Tonight, we are featuring Jacqui Germain, who wrote Bittering the Wound, Sara R. Burnett, who wrote Seed Celestial, Wendy Wimmer, author of Entry Level, and Emily Pifer, author of The Running Body. And so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and White Whale quickly. I am Halsey, the events coordinator at White Whale Bookstore. And for those of you who might not know, White Whale Bookstore is a family-owned general interest independent store located in the Bloomfield neighborhood of Pittsburgh. Our store motto is conversation, community, and culture, and we strive to be a home for book lovers. Our events programming features local, national, and international writers and translators reading, discussing, and celebrating literature of all genres and for all ages. So if you're here tonight, we do have a few events coming up that we think you might be interested in. We are getting going with our workshop series. Monica Prince is hosting a one-day poetry workshop, The Pleasure Principle, Erotic Poetry Writing, this upcoming Sunday, November 13th from 1:30 to 4:30 p.m. It is a generative workshop where students will start at least 3 erotic poems, develop a better understanding of how eroticism extends beyond sex, and to cultivate confidence in sharing sexy poems with an audience. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Monica Prince, she is a fabulous choreo poet with just the most contagious energy that is so incredible and uplifting. And if you've ever been curious about how to write a poem with confidence, or even like about sex or both, that is definitely the workshop to take. And then on Tuesday, November 22nd at 7 p.m., we couldn't be more excited to host local author Chloe Leese in celebration of her latest romance novel, Two Wrongs Make a Right. She'll be joined by Maisie Eddings, author of most recently Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake. And we do have a pre-order campaign for Two Wrongs Make a Right. And the live stream is available. And you can just check out all of those things, workshop stuff, Chloe Leese launch stuff, or any other event that we have, and RSVP if they're online at whitewhalebookstore.com. Just some notes and housekeeping about our Zoom settings. You'll notice that your audio and video are off, and they will be for the duration of the event. And that's just so it's easier for us to focus on the writers and their work. The chat in the Zoom meeting will be activated for you to only message the host, which is me. And you won't have the ability to message other writers or other audience members. I'm mumbling my words. It's such a strange time. And then you'll also notice that we have the reactions button. You can use the emojis to interact with the writer's works. Some of my favorites, the heart emoji. You never know, somebody might crack like the funniest joke ever. Party emoji, definitely appropriate for tonight because it is absolutely a celebration. And so just go ahead and interact with them that way. You can also send them comments directly to me, and I will go ahead and pass them along after the reading is over. So you also can create a optimal viewing for you on your end by hiding the non-video participants. And all that means is just hiding everybody who doesn't have their camera turned on in the meeting. And to do that, you just click on your little box on Zoom and the ellipses in the top right-hand corner, and you just select hide non-video participants, and then they will disappear. We do have Zoom's live closed captioning on as well. You can toggle it on and off by clicking the CC button or the ellipses at the bottom of your screen. And I think that that is pretty much all of the housekeeping stuff that I have. Before I turn things over to Christine in a moment, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the order and what to expect tonight. So I have first up for you, Sara, and then following Sara will be Emily, Jacqui, and then Wendy is rounding us off the evening. They will be discussing their work very briefly before they read, and I'll just be pasting their bios in the chat, as well as some links where you can like check out their work or read about them and some places where they've been in the news. So that's exciting. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to.
Thanks, Halsey. As Halsey mentioned, I'm Christine Stroud. I'm the editor-in-chief of Autumn House Press. I want to take a moment to thank Halsey and Anna and the entire team at White Whale Books for all their hard work and support of local authors and local presses like Autumn House. And of course, I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight. It's so nice to see familiar faces in the list and also new faces, so welcome. I'm not going to take up a bunch of time because I want to hand it over to our readers as soon as possible. But I did just want to take a moment to say that being a part of bringing these 4 books into the world was a real honor and a real privilege. As you'll hear tonight, while these books have different subject matter, they engage and address different issues, they're similar in the ambition of the project and these authors' unflinching eyes and really clear voices. Being able to publish emerging authors like Sara and Emily and Jacqui and Wendy makes my job a pleasure and exciting to come to every day. So I just want to say congratulations to the 4 of you on your new books, and I'm so excited to finally get to hear you read them. So congratulations.
Okay, I guess I'll start. Hi, I'm Sara Burnett. I'm very honored to be here tonight. Thank you to White Whale Books, and thank you to Christine and Mike for shepherding this book through its final stages. This is my book, Seed Celestial. It's kind of awesome to be here tonight, and especially awesome to be reading with Emily and Wendy and Jacqui as well. So little brief about the book. It's poetry, and it covers everything from motherhood to all the issues that matter a lot to me: motherhood, climate change, racial and ethnic identity, gun violence, everything that keeps us all awake at night, pretty much. I'm sure I'm not speaking for myself. I'm going to start with a couple of poems, and the first poem I'm going to read is entitled Endling. And this is a poem that centers a lot about climate change and also the particular anxieties that come with raising a young child. Maybe it's worth saying I have 2 children. One just turned 6 and the other turned 3, but at the time she was more like 2 here. Endling. There's a man who cares for the last snail of its kind, Aphidella apixflova, knows precisely how much moisture, shade, and light it needs to thrive, while it spends its dwindling time in a glass cabinet. Don't think about what you can start, think about what you can end, was the advice I heard on a time management podcast while slicing bananas for my daughter's breakfast. The banana comes from Guatemala, where its kind is plagued by the fusarium fungus, to a possible, almost certain, if it continues at this rate, extinction. I've never been to Guatemala, seen a rotting banana plant, or touched a snail's glossy shell of the kind that resembles the pellet of a chocolate box. Dark brown, chestnut, white, the occasional splash of mint. I watch my daughter collect stones in her plastic bucket, clinking them beside her as she runs smiling from one corner of our yard to another. Impossible to say if this July is the warmest month since the last warmest month until it is. My dread a garden crawling with invasive insects. Later, she smashes bananas at the table between her dirt-crusted fingernails, laughs at the stickiness while I try to finish the article I started days ago about Achignella apixvolva, whose largest threat is, you might have guessed, another snail. Euglandina rosea, aptly named for its rosy-hued carapace, who will follow the slimy trail of its gastropod cousin, then yank it from its shell with its serrated tongue and swallow it like Cronus, shell and all. When a species is the last of its kind, it's called an enling, a word that reminds me of changeling. Such a fairy swap child I've called my own. I've made this place for her, warm, soft, a place that someday I'll not be allowed to enter, that may not even survive me. The next poem is in the similar theme of climate change, but I have a series of poems that takes the myth of Demeter and Persephone and writes with the theme of climate change in it. So in that myth, Persephone, Demeter's daughter, is abducted by Hades into the underworld, and in that mythology, that gave rise to the seasons, winter. So if you had never had winter before, that would have been a type of climate catastrophe, which is what I imagine in these series. Demeter's wager. At first, it didn't seem horrific. The earth dying as I felt, if I could, like dying. I stopped eating, dressing, coloring my hair. Then I grew sick of the trees, the way they, full and green, mocked how I felt, so I stripped them bare. After that, it was easier to let go. Slowly, I gave away my belongings and hers, shoes, belts, coats, still wearing her scent, books with their dog-eared pages. Then meadows, estuaries, streams, forests and their forest creatures, whole species of birds and fish. It was almost eerie how light I felt when I didn't care for Earth. Every day, no surprise, the sky the color of lint. When I thought finally there's nothing left to save or throw away, I remembered I had all eternity, an empty glass to fill. I couldn't shrink it, so I expanded it, the way a bruise on a fruit rots it entirely. At some point, we're all deceived. Some days I hear her voice in the kitchen, other days only my echo. Call it grief or despair, it doesn't matter. Every day I kneel down and feed it. Bless this rash of fires, this flooded city, this cracked, parched earth, so all the water, all the salt, all the spoils of this world hear me say, I am your daughter too. The next poem I'm going to read is the first poem in the book called Ab Ovo, which is from the Latin meaning from the egg or from the beginning. So not from nothing, my yolk and hatchling, pomegranate jewels set in membrane, plot and thread, honey of the hive. I didn't know you, one of 7 million chances hibernating in a fluid sac, waiting for the signal to implant yourself. Out of the vestibular bulb, the tulip, the peacock feather, the fern. In another life, you were a crocus pushing up through snow. I was a doe crossing a busy stretch of road alone. Unfurl your leaves, your top-heavy camellia head. You made a bed from pressed petals in the swaddling dark. Your body was that supple. I kept a wad of soaked cabbage leaves to cool the sores. Forgive the ways I'm ill-prepared to receive you, for you to break from this body into your own. In another life, I was the wind prickling your ear to keep you still. You were a deer in tall grass. So I mentioned that I have a daughter who shows up a lot in this book. And a lot of the anxieties I have around, climate change is true, but also about about being a woman, and particularly in this moment. And this next poem, called Cherchez la femme, from the French meaning find the woman, is, I think it's worth saying that I wrote it in the aftermath of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, listening to Dr. Christine Blasey Ford testify. That brought up a lot of anger, as I think it did for a lot, and I channeled it here. I also think it's worth mentioning that I took inspiration from the poet Terence Hayes. In his book, Poems for My Past and Future Assassin, there is a poem that begins with a line, "There never was a Black male hysteria." And I think you'll hear an echo in the first line of that poem here. Cherchez la femme. There never was the hysterical woman locked in an attic, an animal on all fours, tearing out her hair or threading a loom and unthreading it every night so she'd never have to bed her believed to be dead husband's friends. There never was the angry woman wailing over a kitchen sink, rubbing her hands raw, trying to cleanse herself of death, or a group of women banded together, denying men sex as if they weren't already assumed plundered. There never was a black or red dress, a smoking gun, la femme fatale, cherchez la femme. There never was a willing muse, never a bruise, a blemish, a scar. There never was the woman sacrificed on an altar with goats to sanctify a city who thought she had it coming and they would be saved. There never was the woman who drowned herself inexplicably in a lake as if there was no cause for her nightmares. Never the scarlet A, the prison break, the abortion clinic bust, a mob wielding pitchforks, the missed rent, stolen paycheck, burning pyres, the chant of lock her up. There never was that tower with a key, long strands of braided hair she could cut herself free from. There was the walk home, and every day the gauntlet of howlers, hollers, hoopla, the construction worker whistles, the can I get some fries with that shake, daddy's girl, teacher's pet, stank liquor breath, unmerciful panic, unheard prayer, the silence after 1,000 doors slammed shut, slut. There was a blunt instrument, her body. There was an accident, her mouth. There never was the hysterical woman. There was the man and his myth, and they would not die, no matter how many times we cried father, no matter how many times they were swallowed in dirt, the earth just spit them back out. So the next poem I'm going to read is entitled English 2. I worked for several years as a public high school English teacher, and most recently in DC public schools, and the sophomore course that I taught was entitled English 2. But in this poem, you not only get that experience of me teaching, but you also have the experience of me as an immigrant's daughter. My mother immigrated from Cuba in 1960 when she was 9 years old. And in the classroom that I taught, there were, at least a third immigrant children. And one of the topics that I write about frequently is about that, is about racial and ethnic identities. English 2. But miss, I make good money. He tells me after we've tallied the days missed. Enough for his black jeans, black hoodie, sneakers, and the rest to send back to El Salvador. You should see me, miss, at work sometime. I don't say I was there last week at the Asian fusion restaurant where water pipes down a green glass wall and you can order dim sum at any time of night. I don't say I didn't see him while he worked in the back scrubbing dishes, mopping floors, hefting economy-sized containers of rice and oils, spices, and cans of sauces, sorting silverware in bins, taking out the trash. When hours later, he should be in my class, where we're reading Things Fall Apart, and when he's there, I'm often at his side to catch him up, to help him get at least enough to pass. My grade, I want to know my grade, miss. And I have to tell him he's failing, as his older brother chides him in English and in Spanish. He doesn't know I understand both, because I didn't say I understand, nor did I offer to speak in my broken Spanish. If I'm the white maestra to them, keeper of test scores, the red pen, of a kind of knowledge you can buy your way into if you're lucky, if you pass, I wouldn't deny that truth. I imagine how it might have been for my mother when she arrived in Miami in 1960 from Havana, the only Hispanic in her class, when Abuelo forbade singing or laughter, noting how many were dying or dead or in prison back home. It's not the same story, it is the same story. I go back and forth in time. I hear Abuelo say lo más importante son los papeles, and my mother say speak English outside. But my student, not yet a man, sits in front of me in a country not yet his home, a country who doesn't see him or even me sometimes, and I wonder, what can he learn that he doesn't know from me? Who am I to say this book is worth the clothes on his back, the money home? How can I tell him what a day is worth? The next morning, his empty chair, and later, Miss, I'm sorry about class. And the last poem I'm going to read tonight is entitled What Was to Keep the Tigers at the Zoo? And it did start from a visit to the National Zoo with my daughter. And I also just felt like I had to read it because Elon Musk is in it. And he's in the news a lot lately too. And I guess my feelings show there too. What was to keep the tigers at the zoo? Oh, and it's also just one sentence, so it's a little hard to read. I'll get through it. What was to keep the tigers at the zoo from leaping over the embankment? No chain link fence, no barrier between one harmless jester or one skipping toddler and a giant crushing claw. I could see the scenario playing out in front of the frightened, clutching their purses and children. Even when my daughter and I went to the park by our house to throw stones into the shallow stream filled with minnows and twigs, bottle caps and plastic wrap, I took a step back to watch her, my foot grazing a yellow jacket or wasp. We are assured we can endure almost anything. But I thought while running in circles, flailing my arms, someone would hear me and break the cycle of vicious then numbing stings. Maybe I've always pictured a lighthouse scanning the shores and someone walking us back inside, as I did with my daughter where we showered and I dressed her wound with Cookie Monster Band-Aids, hydrocortisone cream, and whispered, "Shh, you're okay now," humming in her ear. When all I wanted was the same soft lulling song to sleep, I can no longer start sentences with all I wanted. We are headed straight toward a reckoning when we wonder why the fish have gone missing, why the fires burn incessantly, why the rain drums on corrugated rooftops to cover them entirely, and who let the tiger out of its cage, who caged it, and who or what will save us from ourselves. I can't dream of my own private island, an offshore account with elite membership to the Elon Musk rocket ship club. We are tethered here in sailor knots, wearing flimsy orange safety vests, toting first aid kits, caution tape, waving at danger zones, with lighted sticks labeling the high risks of breathing while poor or hungry, or having darker skin, or speaking a foreign tongue, or carrying obscene debt, or caring for our children. We who invented forgiveness but do not give it, and would not now know how, when to ask, or how for the good news coming is we have each other as well as the bad, while the mornings are mortal and softly lit, and the majority of us long for another, then another, and our mothers. And that's it.
Wow, thank you so much, Sarah. I felt like I could have listened to you all night, and I almost forgot that I was reading, so that is also a gift. Thank you so much to Mike and Christine for helping me bring this book into the world, and to Halsey and White Whale Bookstore. I'm so grateful to be here. So a little bit about my book. It's a memoir. I think of it very broadly as an exploration of the way our bodies get tangled up in stories, particularly cultural stories. But more specifically, it really follows my experience as a collegiate cross country and track runner at Ohio University, as well as a lot of my teammates and competitors' experiences. And this phenomenon that is sometimes or colloquially called the shortcut, which is a common practice, at least it was when I was in the NCAA and still continues to be a common practice, where runners, especially female runners, decide to run a lot more or are told that they need to run a lot more while also eating a lot less. And this typically ends, it sometimes creates faster times for a short period of time, but it typically ends in bone injuries, bone problems, and a lot of other issues down the road. So I'm looking at that from my own personal experience, and then kind of also looking at the elite running culture that surrounds it, and then also like the layer above of the broader culture. But today I was really craving to read a little bit of a different kind of strand of the book that is really about hauntings and healing. So I'm gonna read the first few pages to kind of ground us in the story and the narrative. But then from there, I'm just gonna be sort of moving through the book and working through this strand that looks at haunting and healing. So thank you all so much for being here. Even though I knew the process of its making, I could not stop staring, could not stop touching, could not stop asking, what am I becoming? Looking in the mirror was like looking at a sculpture and wondering how it could have possibly been made from what was once a different thing entirely. Flesh wrapped tight around muscle, around bone, every rib self-evident, tendons so exposed. There were all these parts of me I had never seen. I called the sum of these parts the running body. The crater in the center of my chest felt like a kind of becoming. I remember the first time I saw it in the mirror, so deep. I took a step back, then forward, then pressed 2 fingers inside of it and felt a twinge of ecstasy, then checked to see if the purple V-neck I planned to wear to the movies that night would cover it. I knew it was alarming because seeing it there in the mirror alarmed me, even though I'd been waiting for it, measuring its depth daily. A few years earlier, in a high school English class, we read about Narcissus, the immaculately beautiful son of a river god and a nymph. The first time he saw his image reflected back to him from a pool of water, he became eternally, tragically wrapped in what he saw blinking back. I often had trouble with, or was troubled by, or have trouble with, or am troubled by the question of truth in Greek mythology. Some of the so-called myths ring terribly true to me. It's no longer that summer, but sometimes it's always that summer. That summer between my freshman track season and sophomore cross country season at Ohio University. That summer the running consumed me. That summer when beginnings blurred into endings. That summer I became running body. Early that June, before the crater appeared, my teammate Julie and I flew with Chris, our assistant coach at the time, from Ohio to Oregon for the junior national track and field meet. I had never been so far west, had never been on a plane. At Hayward Field in Eugene, I ran a personal record in the 5K, but I don't remember my exact time or place or anything else about the race. Instead, my memories from the week I was in Eugene consist mostly of images of thin, hard running bodies. I spent most of that week looking at professional runners whose heights and weights I knew as well as, if not better than, their accolades. I looked and looked and looked as they leaned towards national championship titles, world qualifying times, American records. Julie spent most of her time looking too. She'd say things like, her abs are crazy, and I'd nod, never knowing exactly which particular athlete she was talking about. After finishing first and second in the national championship 10K, Shalane Flanagan and Kara Goucher, the 2 running bodies on which I fixed my gaze most closely, jogged easy around the 8th lane, skin and muscle and smiling. I stood along the fence and watched the sunset on their sharp contours with 2 issues of Runner's World magazine pressed to my chest. When I held the one with Shalane on the cover out to her, she grinned down at the image of her body. Then she popped out her sharp, spandex-covered hip and rested one hand on it, pointing her other hand toward her image on the magazine. She looked up to me, grinning, and said,
Who's this hottie? As she took my pen and started signing, I wanted to stop time and tape measure all of her dimensions and compare them to all of mine. But I don't want to mislead. It's not as if Shalane handed the magazine back, my hands replacing hers, and just like that, it was decided the running body would soon be all that was left of me. For a long time, I'd been calculating, measuring, testing, burning. In the middle of a long hike just outside of Laramie, Wyoming, a new friend said, "Tell me the Emily Pifer story." It was late summer 2015, and I had just moved to town to start a graduate program in creative writing. I was having a hard time breathing, up over 8,000 feet, but in between gasps, I told him my story would be boring. Then, for the first time, I began trying to tell him what I'm, right now, in this bleeding, brief, blurring instant, trying to tell you. Before my Grandma Jane and Grandpa Denny and their 4 children, then teenagers, lived in the house deep in the Appalachian Mountains up in Tucker County at the bottom of Location Road, Jacqui Adams lived there. She died there too. There was a small house fire. She got caught in the flames. Her body burned, but some part of her stayed. In that old house, Jacqui Adams' ghosts performed little hauntings. "Weren't you sick?" I asked my grandma once, after she finished the briefest version I'd ever heard of a Jacqui Adams story I'd heard many times before. She stiffened and said she wasn't sick. "I thought that's why the house was a mess. I thought that's why you were resting on the couch," I asked. "No," she said, in that stern, worn way of a woman worn stern. "But between you and me, Jacqui Adams had a thing for domestic upkeep. She only showed up for her little hauntings when the house got out of order. And sometimes, when my grandma tells it, she says she'd been sick for days and she was lying on the couch, facing the wall, trying to get some rest, ignoring the accumulation of a few days' mess. And that's when she felt touched. By who? She felt it on her shoulder, gentle, then gone. She called out to my grandpa, 'Denny?' But he was across the street working. 'It was Jacqui?' I always ask, and my grandma always nods her head, a smile spreading from her eyes. I'm not sure when Jacqui Adams lived in that old house or when her life burnt out. Maybe it's not even the truth about Jacqui that most interests me. Maybe it's the way the stories about her hauntings move from telling to telling, body to body, and how in this way the happened bleeds into the happening. How once haunted is always haunting. In 1985, it started raining in Tucker County and didn't stop for a long time. The rain kept coming and coming. That's how Jacqui Adams died a second time. 100 homes were destroyed in the flood, many of them up and floated away. My uncle and aunt's house did. And while that old house hung on to its place in the ground, Jacqui's ghost drowned. What I mean is this: after the flood, Jacqui never showed up again. Like all that time, there were parts of her still burning. Like all that water finally extinguished the flames. Like every little haunting was a cry for help, put me out. "What did Jacqui look like?" I asked once. "Oh," my grandma looked at me hard. "She was just a regular woman." She said those words as if they explained everything. That old house is starting to fall down now, but you can still go inside and you can still reach up and trace your finger along the water line. When the running body fractured from the center, right down the pubic bone, I felt a glimmering clarity. I knew I should not have done what I did to my body. "I'm sorry," our team doctor said, his hands already moving towards me, "but I need to get my hands on it." Looking over at our athletic trainer, he said, "Katie, can you close that door?" Once the door was closed, he began using his hands to search my groin for the precise point of pain. My eyes flooded the instant he found it. I gritted my teeth to keep from screaming. Soon after, I was relieved when the scans proved my pain was not imaginary. Now, I wish I could reach in and feel the once fractured bones. I'd like to see, for sure, that there is no longer room for me to dwell inside the wounding. I have a theory that if I could just touch the evidence of their healing, something might emerge, and that something might be a whole new way of being. There is something sure about the site of injury, how it becomes a site, how you can see the thing that happened and know somewhere inside your body it had for a long time been happening, especially when there are so many ways of wounding and getting wounded that involve no sight, and no sight, no way of seeing what happened or what is happening, like losing bits of who you are or who you thought yourself to be. That sort of loss cannot be seen by machine. That sort of lostness goes undetected, no matter the tests, ways of testing. And so how can you trust there's anything real about what you are feeling? I miss the sureness of hard, shiny discs delivered from the doctor's office and stress fractures shining on computer screens and heads nodding and knowing, seeing, believing the injury, and as it follows, believing me. When a bone fractures, what happens in the split? I always imagined it there like a fixed emptiness, but now I wonder, do fractures fold in on themselves? Does each side of split bone begin working to fill the empty at the moment of its conception? Is there any space at all? In MRI scans, fractures look like nothing more than scratches on hand-me-down coffee tables. And on X-ray readings, you can't even see them. You can only see evidence of healing, scar tissue making its home. While waiting for results, between feeling and seeing the proof of my injuries, I would press hard through my skin along each millimeter of bone, grinding my teeth against the rush of tears when I found the precise spot of the fault line. The sting would ring through the rest of my body, and that's how I know. Every time the doctors would call with the news, 3 times in 1 year, starting 1 year after that summer, I had already believed in the presence of the fractures, like someone who knows they have seen a ghost. My mother's mother, my grandma Sue, let my sister and I dress up in her lingerie. She called them her foo-foos, sheer shorts with polka dots and lace trimming, silk camisoles loose on our torsos. She'd let us wash our hair with her expensive shampoo, then comb it straight back, each tooth moving across scalp, thick white towels across our shoulders to keep the backs of our nightgowns from dampening. Then we'd go to the kitchen, where she'd teach us ballet, long past our usual bedtimes, our right hands holding tight to the handle of her oven, left arms floating in the air, up for second position, then back down. One afternoon, Grandma Sue and I sat down on the floor in her living room. She handed me a pair of scissors, and together we went through boxes of photographs, cutting out the faces and bodies of her ex-boyfriend, Buzz. Even then, though I couldn't have been older than 5 or 6, I think I understood the theory we were testing. Whether seeing the absence of the holes could be better than facing the presence of the images that once filled them. Because maybe on trash day, when all those little scraps of Buzz would be sent away, our memories would be full silly. And maybe if we just looked hard enough for long enough, the holes could signify the presence of something, rather than just the absence of another body. Healing is supposed to be a beautiful thing, but healing requires you to shift your relationship with the past. It requires you to rewrite the story, or at least the ending. To heal properly, you must forget. Maybe not the whole thing, but parts, certainly. The whole must become holy. In this way, healing is its own kind of loss. Imagine, you lose something, but eventually become so comfortable with the loss that you forget you ever had the thing. And so eventually, this comfort erases the absence, or at least the presence of the absence, your awareness of it, your ability to see and feel and attend to it. And as it follows, your comfort with the loss erases the state of ever having. During the first fracturing, I spent hours a day in the pool, often 2, but sometimes up to 4, alternating between swimming laps and water running, legs churning water in the deep end. I would ask my future self, the healed one, how does it feel to be here, mixing it up for the first time with the top runners in the country? Then I'd whisper the words under my breath. I'm just so grateful that I came out on the other side of my injuries and that I'm able to be here doing this. I'm so lucky to have so many supportive people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. I've dreamed of this moment 100 times, and it feels amazing that it's happening. But believing in something does not make it true, will not make it happen, or will not undo its happening, does not thrust it, the something, into the real. Soon, my body can no longer hold itself up to my magical thinking. I lost faith. It happened quickly. People say failure is good because it teaches you. And this is true. I can't say that it's not. I have learned. But what people say less is this. I would give back all this failure, all this learning, to watch an arm raise a pistol toward the sky, to feel that Buzz move itself up legs to chest, hear the shot, feel their running body take off, begin to make its meaning, step for step, to the rhythm of hard, controlled breathing. I would unlearn every lesson failure taught me for a chance to vanish again into the running. One night, back before the flood. My grandpa says he was sitting at the kitchen table when he noticed the back door was left wide open, and so he got up to close it. And he did close it, he says, but a short time later, he noticed the door came open again, and so he got up to close it again, and he did close it again. This time he even locked it. And I'll be damned, he says, when he tells the story now, that damned old door came open again. Instead of getting up a third time, he just said, okay, Jacqui, close it when you're done. And I'll stop there. Thank you all so much. And I'm so excited to hear Jacqui and Wendy.
Hi, Emily, that was beautiful. Especially the part about injury and healing, I feel like really resonated with me as well. That was really beautiful. First of all, apologies for the lighting. I just realized that I only have overhead lighting in my apartment, so apologies everyone, but thank you so much for being here. Obviously, thank you so much to Autumn House. Thank you so much to White Whale for hosting and making the space for all of us to celebrate each other's work. I think it's stuff like this always reminds me why I do love writing, is like actually being able to share it with each other in these moments and in these events. So it's really special. I'm really excited to be sharing work from my book, Bittering the Wound. The collection is a retelling and kind of exploration through my experience over the several months of the Ferguson uprising in 2014. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I've lived here for a very long time, and over the course of several years worked through this manuscript, and I'm so happy and excited and honored and nervous and all of the feelings, right? To have this be a real book in the world. So I'm going to read a couple poems, and then we will keep the night going. I'm actually going to start with the first poem in the book. It's called On This Day. The clouds pulled apart from themselves like a damp napkin splitting its own skin. When it came, the night brought a pack of wolves between its gums. There were at least 50 of us, the fresh, sickly, syncopated beat of another one bumping through our clammy joints. The lights of the gas station turned the scene theatrical, a cluster of officers lacing navy and black through the pumps. An arm and then another arm, someone yanks a sleeve and a knee bobs toward the pavement, an elbow pressed against someone's chin, and suddenly the bodies are a twist of limbs, slipping around themselves like a fist of particles, frantic and near materialized, another creature altogether. It's December. The news cameras have found a newly gouged universe in another city. Humvees in St. Louis are old news. Always hands and handkerchiefs, a Black person alive and then not in the tortured pixels of some video footage, a wall of rubber and metal rippling across the street. We, the weary, with our soured nerves turned rotten and bitter with repetition. A new gas station dressed in the ash of the old one. There are no news cameras, no witnesses. Our anger comes unbridled, ballooning and buckling against the skyline. We snarl, snap our teeth, flex our forearms, pace through the wet grass. By the time the brawl begins, it's overdue. Already too late to temper the adrenaline preceding it. We'd been licking our teeth at each other for months now, St. Louis and St. Louis again. The news outlets tongue another city's cracks, and it's just us now, the novelty having withered into the winter. My, how hungry we've been, how eroded our faith in whatever mercy or fear stopped us before now. A flashbang erupts and the scattering is reflexive. My thighs jerk suddenly in the opposite direction. I lose my left shoe, my breath, everyone I arrived with. I'm standing on the tar, lopsided, jarred but steady now. The wet ground soaking into my left sock. And that's it. That's the whole story. Sometime before or after the quick trip across the street was set ablaze, and a single cop sauntered towards the melee with an AR-15 tight against his chest, and a friend ran towards the flames to warn people, and I had a vision of him being peppered with bullets, so I screamed and cussed him clean the hell out while his jacket vanished into the crowd. Sometime before or after, we are arguing with 3 police officers anchored in line beneath the gas station's overhang about this impossibly large, broken American thing, and we were shaking our hands and they were rolling their eyes, and another friend burst into tears, and I'd never seen him cry before, and he couldn't stop, and I saw him fighting it, you know, the kind of cry so fresh and foreign, it comes out of a man confused and sputtering, and so I hit him in my shoulder until it passed. But that's it. That's the whole story, I swear. So one of the things that I wanted to do with this book was kind of take the time to write poems that were like based and located in protest, as opposed to being kind of about a protest, which was difficult to do and took me quite a bit to kind of process and sort of work through those memories myself. But so several of these in particular, I think are take place at scenes of protests where sort of thankfully folks that I experienced them with sort of on their own have said they've been able to recognize. And that was really important for me in this book, was that people from St. Louis who experienced the uprising could see themselves in the poems too. This next poem is called How to Make South Grand a Ghost Town. On this night, the canister lands between my feet, sprouting a bulbous, billowing white heaven, empty of harps and mercy, void of any god and uninterested in finding one. There is a flash of light, a sudden moment when the whole world is swallowed in a bright clap and bang, and then is remade piece by piece in the moonlight. I'm running and the ground appears again, the bits of grass sprouting like small fractured Edens between the pavement. The handful of cars my waist swivels past and the night is not over. The whole world, yes, the whole world is here. The fourth time it happened, I discovered the body cowers involuntarily, will give up its senses in exchange for relief, and despite the blinding burn, will wholly survive. It is a horribly bearable ruin. The tinny sour of tear gas, both handless and choking, dares your body to escape itself and empty the skeleton of all its parts and rid your flesh of mist, this smoke that brandishes nothing but a stinging cloud and still lacerates your chest, spasms your lungs into hard fury till the cough and the cough and the cough and the cough, breathe the cough and breathe cough, cough turns to gag and gag, even your kidneys shudder with force. You think your whole gut has uprooted and will leave you tonight. All of this while blinded. All of this in a noisy darkness that is clamor and crying and a chorus of throats, all sucking acid until they find clean air. You forget your burning sockets when your chest ruptured open. You forgot your chest with all the desperate gagging. You forgot the gagging while your eyes drowned themselves until the acid drowned too, streamed down your cheeks and softened, cooled your lungs, metronomed your breathing and released your eyelids, your fists, the whole night sky, so big and finally visible again. This next poem is called Flatland for Canfield. We were obnoxious lovers then, loud, hissing, fists seeping through our sun-darkened skin. A mass of questions marching across the city, wailing against the pavement and always returning, prodigal-like, to the seed of the shattering. This ravenous freedom, young, brave, and stubborn, so desperate to see ourselves, we pressed everything into a mirror, warped the residential inlet into a shrieking mouth when the glass broke. We loved you as we loved ourselves, pressed against phone screens, stoop niggas and gold teeth sifted and strained through protest chants, a child's bicycle overturned beneath our urgent, urgent feet. The bowl of the neighborhood, a temporary arena, displaced stage where we bent our shoulders inward, parceled the land into holy sections. We, audacious and basking in it. We, drunk on any evidence that someone like us was alive, still, that the face in the glass across the bowl of the street had a heartbeat once, too. I will read two last poems. One of the things I also wanted to do with this book that was really important for me was to kind of write a manuscript that was a bit of a corrective to kind of the national media narrative at the time around Ferguson, that I think some of those narratives today, if they were to happen again, and in instances where we've seen them happen again, there are plenty of critiques of those practices and some of those narratives. But back then, right, the idea of focusing on the property damage or on the looting or whatever else was largely unquestioned. And so part of my project with this book was to kind of write something that would sort of color in St. Louis and color in the city's people, and kind of humanize us and our relationships to each other, our relationship to the city, and also just humanize the city itself. So these last two poems are, I don't know, happier than like the rest of the manuscript, which is a change for me. Okay. I don't know if it's that happy, but I like it. I like this poem. Okay. It's called The Grill Shop as an Armory. St. Louis is a city that burned a nightlight into itself. St. Louis is a mouth that still has all its teeth, but some of them are gold, which makes people not want to hear it speak or scream or even laugh. St. Louis takes its first deep breath in months, maybe years, but we're all so sure it's just choking, so sure they freed its whole big throat, all of them from all the way outside, way out there. But St. Louis burned its own nightlight, and St. Louis gilded its own teeth, and St. Louis smiled without them. It wasn't choking, it was holding its breath. It's been blue with waiting, just held its breath till they all thought it would die, just to prove it can survive anything. And then last poem is called Still Unbuttoned and Unbothered, on imagining that freedom probably feels like getting the itis. The table settles. Before you is a series of well-seasoned scraps framed in silverware and open palms. The entire kitchen exhales and every torso leans back in unison, a table blossoming bodies and satisfaction. Someone pops open a button and then another, several burps that interrupt, scoff at the hand cupped around the mouth, bellow with pleasure as they fling out of the body in triumph. Every bra is undone, unceremoniously, straps wilted out of shirt sleeves or across furniture. The land of satiation, the land of, if it itches, scratch it, land of pleasure, everything sagging with joy. Someone passes gas loudly. It is full and foul, but no one is embarrassed by the scent of a body that has gotten its exactly what it needed. The stench of enough. My God, to be so satisfied you reek of it. Smell badly of, I do not want more, I have had my fill. To stink of gratitude, to be immobilized by its weight. The eyelids flutter, nearly drunk with it. Here the body so saturated and somehow fears nothing. What a condition for the body, so unlike the state I am in, so enough that all I must do is sleep. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much, Jacqui. That was amazing. And ending your set with a fart is just that is power. Thank you very much. I'm Wendy, and just I want to thank everybody here for being in this room together with all of us. It's just such a magical thing that we can all connect and celebrate literature. And a huge thank you to Christine and Mike from Autumn House for just putting together this amazing contests and collections and offerings. I have read a couple of past winners in the last couple of months, and it's just everything is such high quality, and I really thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Halsey, for getting us all together, getting the band together. So thank you so much. My collection, in cases 14 stories or 15 stories. 15 stories. It's called Entry Level, and it has a loose thread where talking about the idea of being underemployed and maybe overeducated, and kind of stuck in that that grind in against a world that, you know, has not a lot of interest in humanity, I guess. The story I'm choosing to read today is called Fuse, and I was inspired by the real life scenario of Chang and Eng Bunker, who were conjoined twins in the early 19th century. And they married sisters, and they had I think they had like something like 20 children between the two of them. And I often was thinking about how weird that is, that, you know, clearly things were happening for them in the marital bed. And good, I mean, good on them for sisters, you know, sisters got to deal with that. But then I was thinking about like, what happens if, you know, you were conjoined and you hated the person that your sibling wanted to be with. So that is where this story came from. The first thing my sister does every morning is poke me in my right rib, which is her left rib. But if she pokes too close to her own heart, I don't feel it. Our legs are usually tangled in the sheets, my ankle bracelet beeping softly because it always needs charging when we get up. This morning, she won't talk to me, just like she hasn't talked to me in months, not since Justin Henry went away and broke her heart. The rib poke is the only thing she still does from before Justin Henry, so I don't mind. Then we get up, take a shower, pee, floss our teeth. Olivia refuses to look at me while we perform our ablutions, turning her head away from the mirror and away from me, her other mirror. A picture of Justin Henry used to be tucked in the space just below the light above the medicine cabinet, the yellow beam shining down on him like he was a saint or the Pope or an astronaut. I took his picture down and tore it up. I feel a little bad about that after everything that happened. I could have let her have that one thing of his, I guess. But looking at it every morning and every night before bedtime put lead in the pit of my stomach. I tried telling Olivia that, but she screamed, "It's my stomach, Dahlia." And you know, she's not wrong. Before we lived here, we were in show business. When we were very young, before we could read, our uncle carried us on his back in our little bunkhouse. We had to hide because otherwise no one would buy tickets if they saw us for free, but we were the odd sisters, Olivia and Dahlia Davis, ODD. And then our uncle got into trouble for driving drunk and maybe something else, hurting a lady, and he had to go to jail. And now we have our friend Ashley, who tells us we shouldn't call her Aunt Ashley because she's not our family or even our friend. She's court appointed, and watching after us is how she earns a living. Before Ashley, we had Aunt Teresa, and before her, Aunt Michelle, and before her, Aunt Connie, who smoked and only ever looked at our feet or our hands. They were all court appointed. But Ashley is different. She's nice. She's our friend, even though she's paid to do it. She has other cases, though, and only 40 hours a week, so we see her just a few times a week before she drops off her groceries and picks up the bills from the mail to pay them and give us an allowance. Otherwise, we can do whatever we want if we don't leave the house. I miss our little bunkhouse that our uncle carried us around in, where we were all twisted together into each other, 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 faces, but we had gotten too big for it anyway. I wonder what happened to it. We spend most of our days on the sofa watching Olivia's stories or out in the garden, which is what I prefer. The garden is just a patio and 2 buckets of dirt filled with plastic flowers, but I call it the garden. Olivia won't move her leg when she's being stubborn, and she's stronger than me, so I don't bother resisting or arguing. We sit on the couch, and I turn my face to the big bay window, and I let the sun bathe me in light while I watch the trucks on the road in the front of our house. Or I read. I like reading stories about pirates and swashbuckling. I like it when a hero stops bad people from doing bad things. There's always a damsel in need of saving. Sometimes the hero carries her to safety, kind of the way that our uncle used to carry us, but nicer. Olivia sometimes tells me when I'm breathing too loud, if my lungs inflate while hers deflate. It makes her mad when our breathing isn't in sync. I don't like it either, but I still do it. Our fused sternum is a barred cage. Justin Henry liked me at first. I never liked him. Olivia liked him from the start. She always gave us hiccups when she saw him, and he said she hiccuped like a little bird or a mouse. He always used small language with Olivia, because I guess most girls like to be thought of as little. He was too stupid to see that when you're only half a person, being small is the last thing you want. But Olivia didn't care. She ate it up. He was stupid and he did a bad job shaving, and his skin was always full of acne, even though he was also losing his hair. How old is he even? I'd ask. His breath smelled like flaming hot Cheetos he ate, and then hers did too. And sometimes he touched our stomach when they were kissing. And once he put his hand on our zipper, I reached down and then I screamed and I fainted, and Olivia said I was a drama llama. At least he stopped that time. I wish I could get a job driving a truck. There are a lot of truck drivers that pass our house, big clanking hunks of metal with so many wheels, the cab impossibly small compared to the payload dragging behind it. It's a hotel for objects, unlimited potential. I've watched videos and studied photos of the little cab interiors, a perfectly proportioned home that moves across the country with room for two. I imagine myself wearing greasy overalls and loose t-shirts and sleeping snug inside the sleeper cabin. Commuters would only see my profile. To them, I would be the driver, solo, alone, even if it was Olivia doing the driving. She could sleep while I was driving, and I could sleep while she drove. We just need to learn to drive, and then we could make our own money, and no one would even recognize us when we were working. Olivia said she was only humoring my truck driving idea, but then after Justin Henry, she wouldn't even humor me anymore. Sometimes Olivia falls asleep when we're watching TV, and I can usually find a good movie on the old movie channel. I look for Errol Flynn, Tarzan, and monster movies if I'm not too sad. Monster movies are the scariest when the mobs come for the monster. I used to hate monster movies, but I was watching them wrong. I always used to think Frankenstein's monster just wanted to touch the girl's face softly to prove that he could be gentle and kind. But after Justin Henry, I was afraid for the sleeping girl. Now it feels good to think about carrying a pitchfork or a torch and crossing the moat to kill the beast, because the beast is Justin Henry and I will hurt him again and again. Olivia used to play games by making rules for us. One day we could only walk by counting each step. She was even and I was odd. Another day we had to put our clothes on backwards and speak sentences backward. Another time we couldn't speak at all and pretended we were mute freaks. We carried 2 notebooks and 2 pens hanging from cords around our neck. The cords kept getting tangled together, but it was fun because even though we weren't actually mute freaks, it was nice to know that things could get worse. Now, whenever I suggest fun day rules, she changes the subject or says, I don't feel like it. Back when Justin Henry showed up, she taught him some of our games, even though I asked her not to. Those were our games only. And then he said, me kiss, and me with live to you want I, and you of care take me let. And everything ruins Dahlia. Her to listen to don't. Wrong is she. And me doesn't like Dahlia. And you only love I. And then he spread our legs and she let him. And I thought about monsters and truck drivers and torches and pitchforks and screams. Olivia talks about separating us. Every time we go to the doctor's office, she asks about the operation. The answer is always the same. There has never been a successful separation of dicephalic parapagus twins. The only way doctors would attempt it is if one of us were dying. In the car on the way back to our apartment, Olivia whispers, I'm dying, as she traces an invisible meridian down our torso, the part of us that is Olivia splitting from the part of us that's me. Snip, 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 you're gone. Ashley hears her and reminds us again that we're special. We're so unique. We're 1 in a billion. I like Ashley a lot, but we're not 1 in a billion. Not when there's 2 of us. Magnets stick together like glue, but they also hate each other if you turn them around. pushing them away from each other so hard you can't stick them together no matter how hard you try. I don't want to be separated from Olivia, but also I wish we could be stuck together sometimes and then unstuck other times so that she could go kiss boys and do whatever she wanted, and maybe I could take driving lessons. I don't know what it would be like without Olivia. Fewer of her fewer of her stupid daytime TV stories, I guess. Fewer games. No more backward sentences. Olivia keeps insisting that she's dying. And I keep feeling like if one of us died, the other would die soon after anyway, even if they could separate us. I know I would die without Olivia, but maybe Olivia has a chance. Better than mine, I think. Maybe she'd go find Justin Henry. Maybe she'd sob or lay down on his grave or something I would never let her do. Ashley said it's not a good idea anyway. His family might see us and complain to the authorities. The courts already let us go on a technicality, so better not give them a reason. We can't even sneak there because of my ankle bracelet. I don't think there's a grave anyway. I think they burned him up. Good. Olivia wants me dead for what I did to her boyfriend, and I wanted him dead for what he did to me. Either both of us are right or none of us are. Sometimes I feel like we're already apart, like there's a me that's out on the highway driving a big rig that roars like a cannon, like a monster about to attack. My face in the driver's side window is pristine, and to my right, a hollow space where Olivia once was, a ruffled bit of skin where she once resided. Our legs still work the pedals, though. Her arm and my arm, tandem on the wheel. We're steering us toward a future without Justin Henry, without his face, his breath, his other parts, forcing our parts to enjoy him. Just me, missing the part of us that is Olivia, aiming at the vanishing point that might be large enough for both of us. That's it. Thank you.
What an incredible reading. I just really want to say thank you to Sara, Emily, Wendy, Jacqui, Christine, Mike, also who I know is in the audience. Fabulous job. Everything. That was just such a great reading. All of you just pulled some serious punches in your own unique, different ways. These books are fabulous. I'm going to drop the links in the chat one more time, where you can get them. Yeah, and like I said, we also have them in the store. I did also drop some links to where you can get or you can check out some stuff that the writers did. You know, Jacqui was in the radio. Congratulations, Jacqui, on the St. Louis Public Radio. And then also Wendy was featured in the Washington Post. I did drop that link here. But yeah, here are all of the links where you can get all of the writers' books. Because after that, I feel like we're all going to be maybe what is it, like $60? Have $60 less in some sense. So let me just drop the last link before I bid you all adieu. And like I said, I wanted to give a shout out really quick too. So Sara Burnett, who just read, Sara is reading at the store next Saturday, November 19th. So in 9 days with Jan Beatty and Daniel M. Shapiro. Jan and Daniel are two very talented and beloved Pittsburgh writers. We work with both of them a lot, and we're so excited to welcome Sara into the store. And as you know, Sara is a phenomenal poet. So if you're local, come through. If you're not, join the live stream. You know, it'll just be a killer reading. So yeah, come out to that, buy everybody's books, have a fabulous night, and stay safe. Thanks, everybody.